Well, let's get more on this, shall we, with somebody who's got a deeper understanding of our nation's classification process, and he says it's time to reform it. D.C.-based attorney Bradley Moss joining us now. So, Bradley, you know, Biden says that having these classified documents was a mistake. Is this an easy mistake to make?
You know, look, it does happen. Let's be very clear. Accidental mishandling of classified documents, of emails, it does occur. It particularly occurs, and this is what a lot of my legal practice deals with normal, federal employees and defense contractors, most of whom simply face an administrative consequence. A lot of it is security clearance revocations or suspensions from employment. The situation we're dealing with the Biden team, and obviously, of course, with former President Trump, is what action was taken by this constitutional officer once the records were found. With Donald Trump, we saw the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. You saw someone who obstructed, impeded the investigation, and according to the search warrant affidavit that the FBI eventually got last August, was engaged in efforts to conceal records. That's why Donald Trump faces potential criminal liability here, and at the moment at least, Joe Biden does not.
So you've got a background. A number of years ago, you actually clerked at the National Security Archives. So you have a background in this. So what would Biden have needed to do? What's the proper protocol for bringing classified material home?
So once he became a private citizen, there is no protocol. You do not bring classified records outside of secure locations. You don't transport them in a box. You don't put them on a shipping truck, anything. You don't take them out of secure locations. Those documents never should have been at those private facilities of Mr. Biden's, and they never should have been at Mar-a-Lago with respect to Mr. Trump. While they were in office, while Joe Biden was vice president, he had security officials with him who would transport records. While Donald Trump was president, he had security officials with him who would transport records. Once you become a private citizen, you are not allowed to hold on to that stuff.
Even if, say, and we can't confirm this, you're thinking about writing a book, that still would not justify the fact that he had these classified documents in his garage.
Sure. So when former presidents, vice presidents want to write a book, they have a mechanism to regain access to the records to which they would have otherwise been privy while in office. It goes through the Presidential Records Act, which applies to a former president and a former vice president. You have a liaison that goes to the National Archives. You can review documents in secure locations. You can coordinate with the archives in order to determine what can be pulled from those records, what information can potentially be declassified or excised from the records to use in a book. You do not take home those documents to use in a book on your own unless you're just looking for trouble.
So let me ask you this, because you think this whole process should be reformed. What are some examples, Bradley, of documents that have been marked classified that maybe didn't need to be?
Sure. So particularly in the intelligence community, they pretty much classify everything up to and including their cafeteria menus. It's part of the culture. Everything about, whether you're thinking CIA, National Reconnaissance Office, National Security Agency, their entire culture is one of security protection. And so everything about what they do, they're concerned would expose them to damage if it got out, would expose and damage the national security of the United States if it got out. So because of where it's located, because of the agency involved, you could have such menial, trivial things such as a cafeteria menu getting classified, which has no obvious purpose in comparison to what you would expect to be classified. Intelligence intercepts, troop movements, recordings of foreign leaders. Those are what you would expect. This is the problem with this mountain of data we have in the security arena. And it's a problem that has been talked about for years and years, and everybody considers how to reform it. We don't ever have real hearings on it. So if they're going to look into this, there needs to be serious hearing to determine if there's a problem with classification and overclassification, and how can we best address it while still protecting national security.
You know, we just buried the lead. I still cannot believe that you would classify what somebody had for lunch, you know, a hamburger versus troop movements during a war. I mean, that's just crazy when you think about the spread. This makes sense to why there are so many documents. And, you know, you've suggested the system should be reformed. You wrote the op-ed. This is why we wanted to talk to you, because now we have digital data, right? In addition, not just the paper. And the director of the Information Security Oversight Office at the National Archives says that they can no longer keep their heads above the tsunami of digitally created classified records. That's the direct quote. So you have that in addition to all the paper. How do you reform that system? I mean, if you were in charge, Bradley, where do you even begin?
Sure. So there needs to be an investigation and an oversight hearing, including with potential management executives, both inside and outside the U.S. government, to determine what type of incentive-based structure can be put in place to determine if there is a way to reduce the overemphasis on classification. And to be clear, there is a ton that needs to be properly classified, properly secured, and properly stored. But there is no real incentive for anyone to ever take a serious look and decide, is this something that really needs to be classified, and particularly classified at such a high level? Is this something that we can reduce the classification on? Because otherwise, as you know, the director at the National Archives was mentioning, it's just a tsunami of classified data. They can't properly manage all of it. It's never ending. And eventually you have what we had here. You have accidental mishandlings by people up to and including former constitutional officers, because we just can't handle it all.
You know, we sure appreciate your perspective. This was a totally different look at what we've been following for a couple weeks now. Attorney Bradley Moss, really appreciate your expertise and your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.